3 Sinister Caving Experiences Revealed. Terrifying tales of haunted depths and cursed explorations in the small town of Maplewood. Whispers of the quarry cave have turned into howls of fear. Legends say it's haunted by the souls of miners missing since December 13, 1932, during a torrential storm that swallowed them whole. Their cries still echo through the chambers, a chilling reminder of those fateful moments. Anyone brave or foolish enough to venture in speaks of strange occurrences. Shadows lurking just outside the light, whispers that tease like the wind but hiss like curses, and an oppressive darkness that smothers one's sanity. Some have claimed they've felt hands clutching their ankles, their throats tightening as unseen forces draw them into the abyss. Sarah, a 35-year-old single mother, stood among her neighbors at the cave's mouth, caught between festering dread and desperate hope. To escape the weight of her mounting bills and the haunting silence of her empty kitchen, she joined the group, masking her anxiety with a smile. They laughed, shared ghost stories, and dared one another to enter the cave. The excitement tinged with terror sparked a flicker of life in her chest. Could this be the thrill she needed to forget the relentless clutches of her financial struggles? Yet as they ventured deeper into the cave, the warmth of camaraderie turned into an uneasy silence. Shadows danced at the fringes of their flashlights. Unnatural markings, grotesque symbols scratched into the rock seemed to leer at them, a testament to lives lost and innocence shattered. Panic stirred in Sarah's stomach as laughter was replaced by wary breaths. What had they gotten into? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The cave walls seemed to pulse, alive with memories of despair. Eerie whispers sliced through the damp darkness. Someone screamed. It was a distant echo, sending chills down Sarah's spine. The group froze, hearts pounding, terror radiating from their very core. What if they were not alone? Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye. A silhouette slipped into the shadows, disappearing before she could comprehend. Unease rippled through the group. They had come together to share thrills, but the thrill turned to dread faster than air cooling against the cave's chill. Trust crumbled and accusations flew. In their panic, voices turned sharp, biting at one another. A hidden threat loomed, hiding within the growing darkness. Sarah blinked against the dim light, her instincts screaming that something wasn't right, that this was more than just the cave playing tricks. Just as they thought they might find an exit, the cave mocked their attempts. Narrow passages twisted and turned like a spider's web, disorienting and ensnaring. A shadow darted past, and someone gasped. The flickering flashlights pulsed with determination, but their power waned, throwing them into a darkness littered with despair, and fear clawed at their throats, desperate to swallow them whole. Amid the cries of panic, mingling with the wind's mournful wails, she felt the weight of her past pressing down on her heart. Each breath grew more ragged as they faced the cave's malevolent grip. As a blood-curdling scream erupted, reverberating off the ancient stone walls, Sarah braced for the nightmarish truth waiting to be unveiled. Would she survive this torment, or would the cave's dark history claim her along with her fading sense of community? The cave seemed alive, a predator that had just caught the scent of fresh prey. The air grew heavier, oppressive in a way that gnawed at the edges of Sarah's sanity. Panic coursed through her, a wave of pressing fear pushing her forward into the oppressive blackness. She could hear her own heartbeat, a frantic drum echoing in her ears, pulsing in time with the uncertainty that enveloped them. "Is everyone okay?" Someone shouted, voice trembling like a dying flame. The ambient darkness swallowed their comfort, gnawing at their fears. I can't see." A voice whimpered. A girl, Amy, who was always the bravest in the group. Sarah could hear the tremor there, a crack in her facade that shattered the remaining pretense of safety. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice louder than she intended, as though sheer volume could drown out the encroaching dread. They pressed on, desperation driving their steps. The deeper they went, the more the cave felt like a living thing, pulsating against their terrified hearts. Inside, the air turned cold like the icy grip of a hand around Sarah's throat. She glanced back over her shoulder, wishing for a flicker of the outside world or at least for the stale light from their flashlights to pierce through the growing shadows. Instead, they found only the flickering glow reflecting the sweat on their brows. Every breath felt like an intrusion into the darkness. Every heartbeat an invitation. Ahead, something shifted. A silhouette stirred. It was like a dark mist stealing their sight. The whispers intensified, a cacophony that seemed to wrap around her, tugging her in, beckoning her to join the banished souls. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. Through the darkness, she fumbled with her flashlight, battling against the dimming light. "What is that?" she croaked, a lump forming in her throat. "I don't know," cried Amy, terror cracking her voice. "I don't know." The competing sounds of their breaths intertwined with that alien whisper, turning into a chorus of insanity. A sudden gust stirred the air, and a chill wrapped around them like a shroud. Sarah felt at first a sensation of fingertips grazing her ankle. Icy, probing. She gasped and looked down, but there was only darkness. When she looked back up, Amy was gone. "Amy?" Panic spiked in her throat. "Where are you?" But only silence answered her, pregnant with dread. She couldn't have just disappeared. Murmurs erupted among the remaining members of the group, faces twisted in fear, yet the cave swallowed their voices like a hungry beast. Every inch of stone seemed to shove them backwards, constricting their already fragile sanity. Sarah felt the walls close in, each jagged, dripping rock a reminder of their inability to escape. "We have to go back," a voice cried out, but backward meant retracing footsteps into the unknown, into where Amy had vanished. No one dared to move. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the silence from somewhere behind them, a cry of sheer terror. Sarah's heart plummeted. They were being hunted. She led the terrified group through the maze of tunnels, the echo of their hurried footsteps blending with choked sobs. The cave twisted and turned, mocking their every effort. Shadows laughed as they darted from one wall to the next, their movements intimate and full of malice. Just as they turned a corner, they halted in front of a narrow, slanted opening. It looked different. Strange symbols were carved around the edges, scrawled in desperation. Blood, perhaps? Fear washed over her as she stepped closer, adrenaline urging her forward. She could almost hear the whispers again, urging her to follow the darkness inside. "What's that?" one of the boys asked, peering at the symbols that seemed to writhe under their lights. Suddenly, without warning, a rattling rush of wind blasted through the cave, extinguishing their flashlights in a heartbeat. The darkness roared back, swallowing them whole. "Stay together," Sarah shouted, panic racing through her veins. But her command faded into the abyss as silence enveloped them. Strung by fear, her thoughts raced. Would they find their way out, or would they meet the fate of those lost before them? They stood alone in the suffocating darkness, each soul intertwined with despair. And then Sarah felt it, a warm, trembling hand clutching her wrist from behind. Was it friendly, or was it one of them? The question hung in the air, heavy and full of dread, as the encroaching shadows grew ever nearer. The warmth tightened around Sarah's wrist, sending a jolt of ice through her veins. She whipped around, ready to confront whoever or whatever was there in the pitch black. "Who's there?" Her voice broke, barely above a whisper, drowned by the oppressive silence. There was no answer, just an unsettling pause filled with the echoes of her own heart. The hand gripped tighter, its pulse quickening in response to her panic. This was all wrong. Fear rippled through her as she realized she could feel the weight of another body behind her but could see nothing. "Let go." She strained to break free, panic blurring her thoughts. The grip released, and Sarah staggered back, her breath hitching in her throat. "Who are you?" she shouted, hoping for a familiar voice, desperate for someone she recognized. Silence. A chilling laugh echoed around them, sinking into the walls of the cave, wrapping them in an embrace of terror. The sound felt alive, swirling around them, taunting them. It was a voice that resonated in her bones, but had no source, like a ghost flickering just beyond the edge of reality. Sarah, a faint whisper cut through the shadows, looping back to her, a sickeningly familiar tone that curdled her stomach. It was Amy. The realization twisted her heart, instilling a deep dread that far surpassed their current predicament. "Is that you?" she called, a pitiful hope flecked with despair. "Where are you? Help me." The voice was weak, distant, surrounded by the echo of drip, 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 the sound of water seeping from unseen crevices, a prelude to a nightmare lurking beneath. The terrors heaved in her chest as she fought against the darkness, battling her own steady breaths, praying to find the source. "Stay close," she yelled out to the group, though she could barely discern them. A chill silence followed, only punctuated by the same disorienting whisper. The shadows stretched and flickered in her peripheral vision, too quick and too dark to snap into focus. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath them. A low rumble rolled through the cave, sending vibrations up Sarah's legs. "What's happening?" someone shouted. Panic surged, and they began moving toward the sound of water, to the whispering voice of their lost friend. "I think we need to go this way," she blurted, instinct overriding the caution. Heart pounding, she sought movement in the dark. The group hesitated, bathed in the ominous, trembling silence that seemed to swell just around them. As they trudged forward, the whispers coiled around them, growing louder, stoking their fears. They stumbled into a wider cavern, its expansive emptiness palpable, almost suffocating. The air hung thick with moisture, wrapping around them like a damp cloak. "Listen," Sarah hissed, and they froze to hear it, the chant. A soft, rhythmic incantation echoed off the stone walls, primal and drumming, winding into something sinister. The words slithered into her mind, wrapping tight like a noose. The chanting crescendoed, wrapping them in dread, and at that moment, something shifted in the shadows. Sarah turned sharply, feeling the hairs on the back of her neck rise. A figure materialized briefly, just within the range of her peripheral vision, tall, gaunt, gray. It seemed to breathe in the dark, its eyes glinting like shards of ice. "Run!" she screamed, her feet moving before her mind could process the command. The group bolted, stumbling forward, leaving her breathless as panic bubbled behind her like a relentless tide. But the shadows weren't just following. They were closing in, with every corner they turned, every twist in the cave. The air thickened, and the whispers became manic frantic and filled with longing. They rushed through the mouth of another narrow passage, but it seemed endless, time stretching fear into an eternity. "What if we never get out?" someone whimpered. The question laced with panic and unimaginable dread weighed on Sarah. "We have to keep going. We can't stop," she forced out. The walls of the cave seemed to tighten around them, and she barely caught sight of the glimmering figure again just an instant before she plunged deeper into the abyss. And then, silence fell like a seal, unbroken and suffocating. Where had they gone? A chilling realization unfurled in her mind. They were now utterly alone, lost in a place where the dead whispered secrets to the living. Would they become part of the cave's dark legend? Or would they find the path back? Sarah's heart thudded violently as she strained to hear anything, a voice, a return of the whispers. Instead, only an echo pulse lingered, leaving her with one final question. Were they truly alone, or was something until then concealed now stalking them through the darkness? The feeling of eyes, waiting and watching, crept up her spine, and all at once, she knew they had awakened something in the depths, something ancient and hungry. The silence pressed down, heavier than stone. Sarah stood in the dark, her senses screaming, the echo of her own heartbeat a reminder of her isolation. Panic flared anew in her chest as she fumbled for her friends. But the weight of the cave wrapped around her like a shroud, swallowing her calls. "Where are you?" she choked out, choking on the damp air. She turned slowly, her hands outstretched, feeling the cold, rough walls brush against her fingertips. "Guys, can anyone hear me?" Only the drip of water answered back, rhythmic and mocking. Each drop seemed to echo with her growing despair, turning her screams into whispers that faded away into the void. And then there it was again, the laugh. An icy, disembodied sound that seemed to twine with the very essence of the cave itself. It pierced her, curling around her bones. She stumbled backward, finding nothing but empty air. "Stop playing." Panic broke through her voice, sharp as a knife, desperate for a reply. The shadows flickered again, reminding her of that gaunt figure, lurking just out of sight, and every instinct told her to turn and run. But there was no way forward now. "Help me," the whisper floated back, softer than before but more insistent, as if it were beckoning her. Sarah's stomach twisted at the sound of her friend's voice. Was it a trap? Was Amy still alive? "Amy?" she pleaded, trying to follow the call even as fear gripped her. With trembling hands, she pressed against the wall, feeling a sharp edge dig into her palm. The close confines of the cave warped her perception. She couldn't tell which way was forward. The chant from before rolled over her, becoming a pulse that brushed against the back of her mind. The darkness felt alive, shifting and breathing, as if waiting for her to make a mistake. She took a shaky step forward, following the echo of the voice, her heart thumping louder with every inch she moved. "I'm coming," she called out, though the words felt hollow in the vast emptiness. Suddenly, a sliver of cold air washed over her, carrying that familiar scent of mildew and decay. She shivered, remembering the stories of explorers lost in caves, never to be seen again. What if she was the next to fade into the legend of the haunted depths? A flash of light caught her eye. Something glimmered in the distance. Just beyond her reach, the outline of a figure began to sharpen, a silhouette curling into the cave walls. It was tall, impossibly thin, with arms that stretched and bent in ways that defied nature. Sarah, the voice exhaled her name, echoing through the cavern like a taunt. The hairs on her neck stood on edge. Instinct took over. She turned and ran. The ground shifted beneath her feet, slick and uneven, each step sending her tumbling toward unimaginable terror. Behind her, the laughter rose, filling the air with dread, as if the shadows themselves were pursuing her. "Please, please," she gasped, desperate for their safety, but there was only darkness. She skidded into an offshoot of the passage, a narrow opening that twisted further into despair. The walls pressed closer, suffocating her as she crawled through the tight space, heart racing. Suddenly the voice rang out again, this time chilling, almost desperate. You one T escaped. The sound slithered around her, twisting her stomach in knots. With every push through the narrow passage, she felt as though something was clawing at her heels, an invisible weight that grew heavier with every inch. A fleeting breath caught at the nape of her neck, cold and smooth, as if inviting her to look back. But she couldn't. She had to move. Burrowing deeper into the shadows, Sarah forced herself to keep going, clutching a spark of hope that she was close to freedom. But the question loomed larger with each moment. What if the way out was not a path to escape, but instead led her straight into the clutches of the thing hunting her? The chant grew louder, entwining in her thoughts, wrapping tighter like a net. Would they find Amy? Would they find each other? Or had they summoned something that had been waiting in the darkness all along? Just as she stumbled into a wider expanse and finally dared to stop, the ground trembled ominously beneath her. And then, everything went black. The darkness engulfed her like a thick fog, smothering any light and sound. Sarah's heart raced in her chest, a frantic drumbeat in the absolute silence. Quiet. Then suddenly, it wasn't just dark. It felt alive, throbbing with a malevolent energy that sent chills down her spine. "Where am I?" she whispered, voice trembling as fear twisted her insides. The air was cold and damp against her skin, and she felt as though she were being watched, the shadows shifting just out of sight. As her eyes adjusted, she saw dim outlines around her. Walls closed her in like a prison, jagged rocks jutting out like fingers reaching to grasp her. She pushed against the wall, feeling each crevice dig into her palm, grounding herself in reality and fighting to keep her mind clear. "Sarah." The voice came again, Now just a breath, faint and distant. Was it Amy? Was she still alive? Hope flared momentarily, but it flickered like a candle in the wind. "Hello?" she called, trying to inject strength into her voice. Silence swallowed her words, leaving only the sound of her own ragged breaths, echoing back to taunt her. Suddenly, a rumble vibrated through the ground, and she stumbled back, heart racing even faster. Had she imagined it? Or was the cave warning her? The laughter returned, louder now, a cacophony of mocking echoes that twisted her stomach into knots. She held on to hope, forcing herself to remember every passing moment with her friends, their laughter, their plans. But as she ventured deeper into the cave's throat, the dread coiled tighter around her. Another flash of light. There was movement up ahead, something tumbling in and out of the shadows. Sarah squinted, trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Amy?" The light shifted again, revealing a pair of glistening eyes, wide and unblinking, staring back at her. Sarah froze. They were not human. They were too large, too vacant, void of any emotion that she could recognize. Then the figure unfurled, impossibly elongated limbs stretching out toward her in slow, deliberate motions. "Sarah." The voice now pulsated from the depths. Merging with that otherworldly laugh, her name twisted into something grotesque, filled with malice. "Get away!" she screamed, turning to run but finding herself trapped in a web of shadows, the walls closing in. A sickening feeling crept up her spine as she scrambled back, feeling the pulse of the cave match the frantic thump of her heart. Then it struck her the laughter wasn't just mocking. It was a warning. The figure lurked closer, the air thickening with its predatory presence. She clawed her way through the tight crevice she entered, sweat slick on her brow. And there it was again, the desperate whisper of her friend. "Help me, where are you?" she cried, desperation cracking her voice. But telling herself to go back felt wrong, and instinct urging her onward. She pressed her body against the walls, the roughness scraping her skin as anxiety clawed at her chest. Just as she reached a small opening in the cave, she hesitated, sensing something slithering in her peripheral vision. The walls around her quivered, vibrating with energy, a heartbeat of their own. Was it fear or something awakening? Then the figure loomed near, stretching its gaunt body, whispering her name with a lilt that sent her reeling. "You cannot leave. You belong here." She lurched forward, slipping into the small space, trembling hands pushing herself further into the blackness. But no matter how deep she went, the sensation of being followed gnawed at her, a dreadful reality sinking in. She had to find Amy. She had to escape. But as the darkness thickened, a question loomed larger than before. Did she really want to uncover the truth hidden within these cursed depths? Or was it already too late? As she pressed on, the walls tightened around her, and the laughter faded into whispers. But one thing remained, that suffocating presence. Something was watching, something waiting. What if the shadows were merely a reflection of her own fears? Or had she truly summoned something more sinister? The walls pressed in tighter, a vice of despair closing around Sarah as she crawled deeper into the cave. The darkness was thicker now, swallowing her whole. Every inch felt like a step into an abyss, the unknown lurking just out of sight. Every breath she took echoed as if mocking her futile struggle to survive. "Help me." The whisper came again, chilling her to the bone. This time it sounded closer. Was Amy in peril? Or was it merely the cave playing tricks on her mind? A flicker of sanity begged her to stop, to think. But hope was a threadbare cloth draped over festering fear. With a gasp, she clawed at the ground, pushing herself forward. Was there truly a way out? The only sounds were her ragged breaths and a distant chittering that sent her mind spiraling. The sound grew louder, turning her stomach. Was it animals? Or something worse? She darted a glance behind her. The shadows writhed, shifting in a way that made her feel dizzy. Something was there, creeping closer. A chill shot through her. It had followed her. Panic bubbled in her chest, and she darted through the pitch-black space, her hands outstretched against the rocky surface, praying to find some sort of escape. Then she saw it again, the glint of those unblinking eyes, just a shadow away. They reflected something cold, a hunger that sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. Not real. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling, but the chant fell short against the oppressive weight of the darkness. Suddenly, the laughter returned, a horrific cackle that filled the cave like poison. She turned to run but collided with the jagged wall, pain blossoming in her shoulder. The figure loomed, spine elongating into grotesque angles. It slid closer, limbs bending in ways that twisted her stomach. "You cannot leave." It hissed again, each syllable like ice down her spine. "Stay away," she yelled, breaking past the panic that threatened to consume her. For a moment, she felt strength, a surge of defiance. With newfound momentum, she sprinted, blindly navigating the cave's labyrinth, her heart pounding like a war drum as she rounded a corner. Something warm pooled beneath her feet. She skidded, nearly falling on the slick ground. Blood? The darkness thickened, swirling and pulsating, tasting of iron. A sense of dread washed over her as she recognized it wasn't just her own desperation that tainted the air. "Sarah." The tender voice shattered the tension like glass. "Amy." Her heart leaped, but before she could respond, the darkness surged, twisting and snatching at her ankles. It pulled with a will of its own, like the cave itself was alive, aching to consume her completely. "Where are you?" she begged, her voice breaking. Was it truly her friend or another taunt? Answering came a series of soft sobs from just beyond her vision, desperately crying for help. "Don't leave me." She stumbled forward, clutching at the walls. "I'm coming, Amy." The ground shook beneath her, groaning like an old man in pain. The shadows flickered, wavering from fear and desperation, hinting at a deeper malevolence. The whispers swelled, an insidious choir chanting her name, pulling at her sanity bit by bit as she drew closer to the sound. The warmth of her friend's presence flickered like a fading candle. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe the cave wanted her to find Amy only to take them both. But that thought slipped away as her instincts surged. Suddenly, a flash of light illuminated the chamber just ahead, a glimmer. A path, a potential escape. Could she reach it in time? The figure darkened her path, now silent, waiting, watching. "Sarah." The whisper came again, not just from the shadows. It was behind her. She spun and saw two glistening eyes, not just watching, but hungry. With a cold gasp, she realized something important. The newly revealed light was ahead. But was it that simple? What awaited her in those depths, just beyond the brink of her fear? Breaking past the shadows, she bolted toward the light, her heart racing, aware that the darkness would not let her go so easily. But would she find freedom? Or would the cave reveal the horrific truths she dreaded? Sarah plunged forward, barreling toward the light, the echoing darkness chasing her, hungry for her fear. The warmth enveloped her, but the shadows clawed at her, whispering wicked secrets ingrained deep in the stone. Every ounce of her being screamed to reach the glow, yet doubt laced through the adrenaline fueling her run. What if it's a trap? The thought snaked through her mind like a venomous viper. She shot a look back, nothing but shadows. But the sensation of something lurking loomed, coiling around her throat, tightening. "Sarah." The voice turned her blood to ice. It was Amy again. But where was she, trapped in the murk? Desperation clawed at her gut. "Sarah, please." The cries seeped through the cracks of her sanity. "Amy, I'm coming." Sarah called, choking back bile, the words catching in her throat. As she tore through the dark, the light danced just out of reach, its refuge wavering like a mirage. Her foot caught a loose stone, sending her sprawling. Pain shot through her knee, but she gritted her teeth and pushed herself to stand. The flickering light painted her gaunt reflection against the cave walls, a ghost of herself cowering in the dark. Panic surged again, sharper this time, red hot in her veins. The shadows writhed, splitting open like hungry mouths. From them, a rancid laughter echoed, sinister and unrelenting. "You think you can escape?" It is too late. The voice twisted in the darkness, and she could feel its presence closing in. "Stop it," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls, wasting itself against the cold stone. The laughter faded, replaced by a low growl, full of menace. Was it the creature? Or something deeper, more sinister? With a burst of courage, Sarah lunged toward the beacon of light, the only thing that felt real anymore. The last few yards melted before her, distant and yet achingly close. She could hear the noises deep inside the cavern, the whimpering, the scraping sound of claws against stone, echoing warnings she dared not interpret. As she reached the edge of the light, the air shifted. The world felt electric, and time warped, stretching every heartbeat like a rubber band ready to snap. And then she stepped into it. The blinding illumination washed over her, a kaleidoscope of colors painting the walls. It felt alive, buzzing with energy. But as quickly as it came, it flickered ominously, shadows creeping at its fringes. The light revealed her surroundings, a vast chamber filled with glistening crystals that sparkled eerily. But it felt wrong in a way that made her skin crawl. There was no escape here, only deception masquerading as warmth. Sarah, a breathy whimper drifted from further within the chamber. It wasn't Amy, too raspy, too distorted. Join us. The words hit her like a physical blow. She spun, eyes wide, searching the chamber's depths. Fear coiled tight in her chest. No, where's Amy? A sense of betrayal fell upon her, deeper than the cave itself. The shadows flared, and figures materialized, unfurling like petals to darkness. They were lost souls, their faces twisted with unresolved terror, mouths gaping in eternal screams. One of us, they intoned, swarming around her like flies. Sarah stumbled backward, heart hammering, desperation fueling her retreat. The light dimmed, and Sarah felt herself pulled, the darkness cascading forward with frantic energy. She was still trapped, caught between two worlds, each pulling her in different directions. Just as she turned, desperately searching for a way out, she heard it again. "Don't leave me." The voice was unmistakable. It fractured the thick dread clouding her mind. Sarah, please. But who was pulling her in, and who was really waiting? She was one decision from utter darkness. Her breath hitched in her throat. She had to choose which way would she go. Light or shadows, sanity or despair. The choices overwhelmed her as she stood, frozen in decision, the whispers and cries spiraling into a storm around her. The chamber roared with a cacophony of tormenting whispers, the voices clawing at Sarah's mind. "One of us," they chanted, each word echoing like a death knell. The air crackled with dissent, an intensity that searched for a breach in her resolve. "Choose." A voice boomed, deeper than the clamor of tortured souls. It materialized from the darkness, a presence clothed in shadow, eyes burning like molten coals. It spread wide, framing the edges of the light, almost as if to devour the safety she clung to. Anxiety crashed over her like waves of ice-cold water, numbing and overwhelming. "Sarah," the tone was both pleading and threatening. "Your friend is lost. Join us and find peace." She clutched her head, battling against the excruciating dissonance, those fingertips of doubt slithering under her skin. "You're lying," she cried, her voice shaking. She could feel it in her bones. Ivan, their friend, the one who dragged them on adventures. Trouble always waited beneath the surface with him, but this was on a different level. "Your light cannot protect you forever." The shadows sagged closer, oozing. "Once you accept the darkness, you will be free." Her heart thundered, thudding in her ears, drowning out the cries of the damned. She forced herself to center, catching glimpses of her surroundings. The crystals cast odd reflections, like memories trapped in glass, glimpses of those who had stood where she was. All swarmed into the abyss. "Amy!" Sarah shouted again, desperation flooding her words. There had to be a way to reach her, to bind them in friendship against this nightmarish fate. "Where are you?" There was silence for a moment, a twisted breath in the tension, before her name returned in a whisper, distant and hazy, like a lost echo. "Sarah," but the darkness stirred, angry, disturbing the very air she breathed. It was an unrelenting predator, unveiling its fangs. Just then she felt it, an icy grip curled around her ankle, pulling her toward the edge of the light. Panic surged, steam rolling over her thoughts. She wrenched her foot free. "No! Get away!" Her voice was a guttural rasp, raw and desperate. She could see shapes slithering through the corners of her vision-tormented forms. Once living souls, now trapped in torment, eternally joining that wretched chant. One of us, should she succumb to the whispers? They offered a strange solace. She could picture it. The release from fear, from pain. But then what would that mean for Amy? For the friends left behind? Fight, Sarah told herself, stoking embers of hope within her. What will it be, Sarah? The voice rumbled low, sinister. Join the darkness that beckons, or cling to the fragile light that leads only to pain. Tears blurred her vision but ignited a fierce rage within. I'm not afraid of the dark, she snarled, feeling strength course through her veins again. She stepped forward, her heart brimming with defiance. You can't have me. But as soon as she proclaimed that, the darkness roared back, more furious than before. The wails swelled, drowning her heart-esque cries, turning into a shrieking tempest that rocked the glimmering chamber. Her vision swirled, light and dark colliding violently around her. Everything was blurring, merging into an overwhelming vortex. Do you really think you can escape? The shadowy presence hissed, shifting closer, its grip tightening once more, the dead touching her, grasping, holding, pulling her into the depths. With a frantic push, Sarah snatched at a crystal, its jagged edge slicing against her palm. She brandished it like a talisman. I won't let you take me. The light dimmed once more, and she cried out, "Where's my friend?" As the chamber quaked, the shadows surged, desperate but hesitant against the blinding light she now radiated. For a split second, she felt the power surge within, entrapping darkness, but still grasping for a thread of hope. And in that pivotal moment, a flicker of clarity emerged from the chaos, a flash that illuminated just enough for her to see. Sarah, please. The voice yanked her back, narrowing her focus to where the glow of the light shimmered, thin against the encroaching dark. Would she sacrifice it all to save Amy? Or would the shadows claim her forever? Time bent, breath quickening, a final heartbeat, a countdown that rattled her core. Sarah took a deep breath, one last plunge into uncertainty. A blinding light surged from the crystal, radiating warmth that battled the frigid touch of darkness. Sarah felt buoyed by it, a sense of safety that chased away the fingers of despair grasping at her mind. She could hear the whispers lessen in intensity, but they still hissed, eager to tear at her resolve. One of us, no, she cried out, her voice echoing fiercely. I am not one of you. Not today. Not ever. Yet just as the light pushed the shadows back, her resolve wavered. Out of the corner of her eye, glimmers of familiar faces twisted within the darkness, a reminder of happy memories that faded before her. Now just a mocking reminder of laughter lost. A flash of Ivan, smiling widely, pulling them into trouble, and Amy, always the brave one, perched at the edge of curiosity. Sarah. The pleas mingled with the shadows, an unsettling harmony of desperation. They were so close yet so far. The vision pushed against her mind's eye, tempting her with twisted promises of reunion. The fear intensified, prickling at her skin as she fought against certain acceptance. The dark voice slithered through the cracks, an echo of comfort that promised her the one thing she desired most. Join the light that taunts you. They'll never return. Stop. Just stop. She screamed, the chamber vibrating with the force of her anguish. The shadows recoiled, swirling like a storm, merging into grotesque shapes that clamored for her. Faces twisted in agony reached out, their mouths moving in a silent scream. Hope began to flicker like a flame about to be snuffed out. Then, a deep rumble shook the chamber's foundations. Sarah stumbled as she fought to keep her footing. The shadows hissed, carving deeper into her memory, unearthing every doubt. You want to save them, the voice said, seductive. But can you truly save yourself? With her heart racing, she twisted the crystal in her grip. It felt alive, glowing with potential, and for a fleeting moment, She saw a path, the very essence of light cutting through the dark. Think, Sarah. She admonished herself, trying to drown out the fear. If she let them embrace her, she might never see Amy or Ivan again. I want to give in, she shouted, brandishing the crystal like a weapon. Light erupted, and she felt its immense power burst forth. She pressed forward, pushing through the darkness like a dawn unyielding against the night. The chamber trembled, shadows screeching in agony as they were momentarily banished by her light. But just as the chaos receded, she felt a sudden chill, a whisper that curled around her heart. What if you can't save them? What if you're too late? In that moment of hesitation, shadows crept back, swirling around her, their icy grip tightening. That's it, Sarah. The voice crooned, hypnotic and low. Embrace the darkness, her instincts screamed to fight. Yet she felt an unusual lull, a pull that beckoned her to surrender. Shapes loomed closer, desperate faces now merging into one. They bore witness to her struggle, the promise of peace evident in their hollow eyes. Let go, they mouthed, a chorus of tortured souls, their sorrow plucking at the strings of her heart. No, she gasped, recoiling at the weight of the decision placed on her. I want tea. But the energy of the chamber shifted, sealing her fate with each breath. She could hear their voices entwining with hers, every plea becoming her own. Sarah staggered, her resolve breaking amidst the roiling shadows. What have you done? The weight of the darkness pressed down, suffocating, stealing her breath. Then, somewhere in the haze, she thought she saw Amy again, her face illuminated in the dim light. Sarah, help me. The plea ignited a fire within, reforming shattered determination. Where are you? She shouted, the words escaping her before they slipped away. Suddenly, a roar echoed, rising from the abyss. The chamber convulsed, rocks cascading from above like falling stars. She could feel something shift behind her, the very fabric of the darkness fraying. Was this the moment she had been waiting for? But the shadows tightened their web, and a grotesque face emerged from the void, smirking, teeth sharp and gleaming. You think you're strong? Taunted. The darkness intensified, clamoring for her surrender, but she gripped the crystal tighter. Would she summon the strength to act? Or was she destined to become part of the consumed, a flickering memory drowned in despair? As she steadied herself for the clash ahead, Sarah whispered into the dark chaos, I will find you, Amy. If it's the last thing I do. The shadows roared, and her heart raced. Time felt like a thin thread. Maybe she wasn't just fighting for herself, but as the ground shook, she wondered, was this truly the end or merely the beginning of their torment? The darkness roared around Sarah, a tempest of despair clawing at her sanity. Her legs trembled beneath her as the shadows advanced, eager to envelop her in their malevolent embrace. The chants of lost souls crescendoed in a desperate cacophony, the voices pleading and provoking all at once. Choose, boomed that ancient voice, echoing through her bones. Her grip tightened on the crystal, its jagged edges biting into her palm. I want to join you, she shouted, her voice cracking against the chaos. I'm not afraid. As the shadows surged, she charged forward, illuminating the chamber with an incandescent light that spilled from the crystal, casting eerie reflections that danced across the walls. The figures swirling in the dark shrieked, a symphony of rage intertwined with the echoes of sorrow. Every heartbeat felt like an explosion, a war cry. For each ghostly form that reached out, Sarah surged forward, determined to break free. Where are you, Amy? She howled, voice hoarse, fear and fury mingling in her chest. Then, in a blink, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Amy's silhouette, desperate, teetering on the edge of the abyss. Sarah. The voice rang out, cracking beneath layers of fear and longing. Sarah's heart cracked wide open. She felt a chasm between them. I'm coming, she screamed, surging in her direction. But the shadows clawed at her, desperate to pull her back into their fold. Join us. A phalanx of souls stretched out their hands toward her, faces contorted with anguish and hope. You belong here, Sarah. No, she exhaled, the air rushing from her lungs. I belong with my friends. The shadows writhed, the hungry whispers increasing in intensity, the darkness trying to drown out her resolve. But she stood her ground, pushing through the muck of despair, inching closer to the radiant figure of her friend. Help me! Amy's voice disappeared beneath the howl of the abyss, swallowed by the dark tide. A lone tear streaked down Sarah's cheek, mixing with the sweat of exertion. I'm right here, she shouted. The light is nothing, hissed the dark presence, looming before her, its shape shifting and coiling. You will never escape. You're wrong. Her voice boomed with defiance. I will find her. Just as she proclaimed her will, the ground shook violently, the very foundation of the cavern shuddering under the power of her conviction. The tension coiling tighter in her chest warred against the disbelief threatening to sink her into the shadows. In one impossible leap, Sarah hurled herself toward Amy, the air thick with echoes, desperation gripping her heart. Hold on. She extended her arm, light blazing from the crystal in her grasp. A pulse of energy surged through the space, the shadows writhed and contorted in agony as her light met the darkness. A searing crack burst through the air, illuminating the chamber with clarity and brilliance. Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. And then she felt Amy's hand clasp her wrist, her warmth, a lifeline woven from hope. You found me. The voice came through a sob, courage spilling out from the shadows. I knew you would. We have to go. Sarah breathed, adrenaline coursing through her. She turned, feeling the fabric of the darkness thin around them as they stumbled back toward the light together. But the shadows weren't done yet. You cannot leave, they portrayed, whipping in fury, clawing for their essence. The moment stopped, a pause heavy with uncertainty as the shadows crashed against them. But Sarah held Amy's gaze, their eyes connecting in fierce solidarity. We are stronger together, they declared, stepping forward into the blinding radiance that stabilized their frightened hearts, shining like a beacon amidst the chaos. Break free. The voice shattered through the chamber, a roar launched against despair, and Sarah felt the surge of energy rise within her mind, pooling in her chest, igniting every ember of courage inside. With a united scream, they tore away from the shadows, their light colliding like thunder against the darkness. With a burst of brilliance, the cave's entrance illuminated before them, a pinpoint of hope, a way out. Run, she urged, kicking into high gear, racing with Amy towards freedom, forging a path of brilliance through the dark, smoke-like shadows, shouting against despair. But even as they fled, the shadows clawed, the laughter echoing behind them, fierce in their resolve. They crossed the threshold of darkness into the refreshing breeze of night, tearing free from the cave's suffocating hold. They emerged like phoenixes into the cool air of Maplewood, gasping at the taste of freedom, the weight of terror rolling off their backs. Breathing in the crisp night air, Sarah turned to Amy, her trembling hands squeezing her friend as tightly. We did it, she whispered, relief flooding through her. But as they stepped back from the cave, they could still hear it, the haunting whispers of those left behind, the shadows still scouring the depths for new souls, forever waiting, forever watching. But they had survived. They had each other. And for now, that was enough. As the duo walked away, a new resolve blossomed in Sarah's chest. The memories would be etched deep, both a reminder and a testament. Whispered tales would circulate like wildfire in Maplewood. But they survived. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, shedding its light over their small town, Sarah and Amy embraced fully, feeling the warmth of their friendship, reborn from darkness. Let us tell everyone our story, Amy suggested with a slight smile. They need to know what truly lies within the quarry cave. Sarah nodded, her heart steady and resolute. But first, let us make sure they're ready to listen. They turned back for one last look at the now-still cave. Shadows lingered at the entrance, but with a firm whisper, Sarah promised, "You won't take us again." And they walked away into the dawn, bound by a fate that was vividly woven from darkness to light, forever connected by the depths of their experience. Now, take a moment to reflect on this journey and share your thoughts. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Every click makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting the channel. Thank you for being part of our story.